Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Head Coach U. I am Bryan Fischer, joined as always by former BYU and Virginia head coach Bronco Mendenhall. Another one of your ACC buddies on today, Bronco head coach of the NC State Wolfpack, Dave Doeren. Dave, thank you so much for jumping on with us.
Oh, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we wanted to have you on for a variety of reasons, but I did want to say that you got a number of former connections there with Bronco's old Virginia staff. You got his quarterback, you got his old AC, Robert and you got Ruffin McNeil on there on staff. How was camp, and how are some of those Virginia folks settling in there in Raleigh?
Yeah, and we have Garrett Tujay here as well as former O-line coach. So, yeah, a lot of connections. We're in the last really day of camp here. So 3 weeks in, 2 weeks from the kick. We play on Thursday night in 2 weeks. So we kind of tweaked our fall camp schedule to mimic that, with Thursdays being our scrimmage day. And, it's gone good. If we come out of today healthy, that's always kind of the biggest concern as a head coach, is the magic line of, enough contact, enough tackling, enough attempts to play contact football, get your guys ready, but at the same time, you need your guys healthy, and so there's always that fine line. We had Dick Vermeil in here during our training camp, which was pretty awesome. And I asked Dick, how did he deal with worry? Because that's always been a hard thing for me, the worry that you have as a head coach when it comes to your players and their health. And he said, I had to train myself to worry more about what they needed to be ready to win. And I thought that was really good advice.
When you think about camp now, maybe as to how it used to be, and so 3 weeks in, with double days that used to happen, and spring practice the way it used to be, I don't know, what are you finding? I think that maybe would accelerate and have your team ready, maybe with even as limited as some of the days are, or do you still feel like it's enough and long enough to be ready, knowing that you're still 2 weeks out?
Well, I think we have to trick ourselves into thinking that we get them ready now. Obviously, for those of us that went through what it used to be like, we know there was a lot more to it. And the thing I always tell the staff and the players, I feel like in practice, there's always moments where guys make a play that just springboard their confidence level. And, even in a practice, you know how it is at the end of practice, Bronco, should we get another rep? Should I call it? Should I let it continue? And there's days where I'll let it continue, and you see a guy like make a diving play, and like, damn, thank God I let that play happen, because I was about to blow it dead. And flip side of that is you could have an injury, and so you're always in that kind of place as a head coach. When is enough? And I don't know if you ever know, to be honest. I think you do the best you can. You obviously used to have better opportunities to prepare them, I think. We practice less and have more injury now than ever at the NFL level, college level. So it's interesting, where we're at with all this.
It is, and as you mentioned, when to blow it dead and when not to. The value of a single player on any given team and the impact that can have on a season. Wow, was that always prevalent on my mind? And the intuition that a head coach has, right? There's the expertise, and there's the data, and there's the facts, and then there's just the feeling.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're trying to gauge all that when you're deciding.
100%. I tell the staff this, I think that's the magic of coaching. You got to know when to pull back and when to push. You got to have that gauge, and you got to have some players that help you too, that'll come to you and give you a little feedback.
So what avenues do you use that way? Because again, the world of coaching and communication with players is also a masterful art, I think, and the authoritarian way only, where there has to certainly be enough of who's in charge and when and how. But for a player to earn a head coach's trust, for the head coach to actually listen or solicit that feedback, kind of what does that look like for you, and how do you design that?
Yeah, it's always kind of organic with me. There's a couple guys each year that are just not going to BS you. And, once you identify them, it's not a all the time conversation. It's when you need it. And I'll bring them in and say, I need absolutely to know exactly where the guys are at. So I'm not going to get mad. Give me the truth. And That's how I do it.
It's an amazing thing to have someone in your organization that has earned your trust, but you also know when given the chance, they'll speak truth to power.
Yeah.
And so I think just the way that you're framing that, number one, that you're calling them in, they know that's probably a big deal, but then that you're asking really just point blank and bluntly for their feedback. My guess is that would empower them, also help build their confidence as well, and kind of give them ownership as well of the team. You know, that the head coach is asking for their opinion. That now gives them an ownership level that's maybe even deeper than it was before you asked them.
Yeah, and I think, I always you worry that they're going to start asking for too many things, right? When you do that, and so there has to be that as well. And that happened a couple years ago, and I had to make it clear, like, hey, the fact that I'm giving you input doesn't mean that you have the right to ask for whatever you want. Like, there's going to be certain times where we need to push harder, to get some mental toughness involved in this. And so that give and take, I think, is important. There's definitely an earned trust thing on both sides there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if not managed correctly, just kind of as you mentioned, it can slide toward entitlement pretty fast. And again, that's with grown-ups besides young people.
100%. Yeah, we had have you ever listened to Brian Kite? Do you guys follow him at all?
I haven't.
Yeah, it's KIGHT. He's a motivational guy, but he's a business entrepreneur as well. But he speaks to a few teams a year. He's the one that was a part of the E+R=O equation back in the day. His dad was a part of that. But he has something he calls the entitlement scale. And so that when you're looking at, where are you on that, when you recruit, because we try to, that's a red flag to us. Like, that's part of what we look for. We want guys that are not entitled, that are going to look for hard work and enrichment. And so the entitlement scale is something we actually discuss with our players, our freshmen. When I recruit, I talk to parents about it. And that one of the biggest plagues in the world, probably.
I think that's right. As the selection and assessment of your players, I remember one time we were at the ACC meetings, if I remember correctly, and there's a chance to visit briefly with each coach if you and you don't have a ton of time, but I remember at one point I asked you how things were going, and I think the number was you had 37 interviews with staff changes. That wasn't just coaches, that was just within the organization, and I was startled by that. And that number has stuck with me because of the consistency and success, regardless of changes, which is part of college football. And so to kind of continue on the same line of the entitlement scale, because certainly you've chosen wisely, and certainly more good ones than bad ones. It's always difficult to get it 100% right. But wondering, as you're looking at staff, knowing that some of my former staff is there, how has that process been for you, and what advice and counsel and processes orientation would you give to others that are trying to manage that kind of those kind of number changes, knowing that's kind of part of the landscape now?
Yeah, I think I learned through failure in this as well.
Yeah.
You have to interview people, even though you get recommendations. You have to get to know them. You have to talk to people you trust. If you haven't worked with the person involved, it's really hard in a 1-day or a 2-day interview, in my opinion, to really know somebody. So I think coaches get lazy in who they hire. They take a buddy's opinion, or somebody maybe that's not a buddy that carries a lot of maybe stick in the profession.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I've tried to, coming off years where I failed and had to replace guys, really, I'll bring 3 to 5 candidates in. I'll get various staff involved. We'll interview them. I'll get people's opinions. I'll call references that are on their list and references that aren't. And because sometimes those are the ones you need to talk to the most. But you know how it is, man. You work your butt off in this job, and if you come to work with someone that's dead weight or they're negative, it's really hard. I mean, it has spread major problems in the organization. And so I try really hard to not allow that to happen. And firing someone's not fun, so if you can prevent that by doing a good job in the front end, it helps.
Yeah, the back end management really motivates front end selection, and anyone that's been in the seat long enough, those exit conversations that I've had, I still remember them, and knowing, right, that ultimately, and a lot of times I use the words to the person I was working with, I'm sorry, you've chosen to leave. And a lot of times people want to frame it like I was fired or the head coach fired me. I kind of viewed it the other way, where there was these expectations and they were presented, and where you were in terms of feedback was given multiple times along the way, and the adjustments weren't made. And that really wasn't my choice. That was that individual's choice. And so the thought that there's a victim mentality as well, that usually would contribute to why they're leaving anyway, right? And so those are challenges, players and coaches.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I think the hardest thing you do as a head coach is, kick a player off your team or fire a staff member. I mean, those two things are terrible.
That they are, and so I'm wondering now with the portal, are you approaching that similar in terms of the vetting of players that might be coming from another program, and what's that been like for you?
Yeah, I think a lot of times I end up being the bad guy now. It's the assistant coaches, as you know, want really good players in their rooms. They want to coach talented guys, and I want them to have that. But, I'm the one that consistently has to remind them about their grades or their character, or, hey, did we call the high school coach? Have we talked to the coaches on the staff?
Yeah.
Even the strength coach, hey, call the strength coach about this guy. Gotten all the way to where kids come on campus on visits, and I'll tell the staff, I'm not taking them. Sorry. I didn't like the guy around our players, or maybe a player told me, Coach, this is not going to work, but I'm looking for reasons to say no as much as they're trying to find ways to say yes. Because, particularly with the transfer, they can really screw up your team. I mean, they got a short clock, and they left wherever they're at because something wasn't good, and they're not coming to your place to be last on the depth chart, or if they were first to now be second, so you have to know if they were a backup there and you recruited them in high school and they just want a fresh start and they're willing to compete, that's a different transfer than, the fifth year that's got 1 year left and he was an All-American at a 1AA school and now he's coming to your place. Like, you better know what you're doing. And so we really try hard. I mean, I don't build our team with transfers. We're using that as another way to use junior college recruiting, I guess is the way to say it. But yeah, we have to be very diligent to not screw up our culture with the additions.
Yeah, I think being mindful and being a guardian of that, and ultimately who is the gatekeeper other than yourself. And you would love it to be the assistants, and I think many try, and you'd love it to be the coordinators, and I think many try, and you'd love it to be the personnel director, and many try. However, it just seems like the more time they invest in a relationship, the farther they drive, the more time or the more visits they've made, the more biased they become. And the head coach ultimately owns it all. And so remaining objective, and also no sometimes is the most productive word in accelerating your program, and being willing and looking for ways to say it. I really like the way you frame that.
Yeah, I think, these guys, as you know, and not that we're not competitive, but the more time you put into a kid, the harder it is to not want to win the battle, and as a head coach, not that we don't recruit them, but we don't get to recruit them the same way. So it's easier for us to be the bad guy, I think. And it does hurt some feelings every now and then. But like I tell the guys, I'd much rather say no to him now than after he's here and we lose that spot.
Yeah. Well, and as you think about the reason they're transferring, which ultimately there is a reason, and getting to the truth of that reason, not the superficial, what sounds good, but the truth. And most of the time, if that clock is shorter, like you're saying, maybe a fifth year or someone with reduced eligibility, that motive is more about them, right? Very few are motivating just to join your team, right? To get in part of your culture, or quite frankly, to play for you as the head coach. And so they're looking for opportunity. And so many times I hear assistant coaches and even head coaches, I don't know, wondering why a young person is moving from one place to another. And usually I say, well, have you been an assistant coach before? Have you ever left one job for another? And I would say, how come? And it was almost always is a better opportunity, That's what they would say. And I'd ask them to define that. What do you mean better opportunity? And that usually meant a higher level or more money. that's what it meant, or more responsibility, right? Kind of in that thing. As a head coach, I've left a program for another program, and it usually was right for a better opportunity. And if you really pull on that, that's, more responsibility or a higher level or more responsibility or et cetera, and or prestige. I think players are doing the exact same thing. And man, not to accept just those answers, but knowing that's part of it. But is there anything else, right? If you can find whatever else it is, that kind of gives a clue somewhere as well, if there is anything else.
Yeah, the landscape, as you know, has changed a lot because of NIL. So, why kids are leaving has now got a level of greed that it didn't used to have. So, yeah, it's completely changed the dynamic, when you start recruiting a guy, because the phone goes dark pretty quick for a lot of us.
When to preserve your culture, and now knowing NIL is part of it, and now living in that world, what influence have you seen, or have you seen NIL's impact, and what are you having to do to kind of protect your culture, knowing now the finances are somehow tied into that, at least in the selection process?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you become a major fundraiser as a coach. That's the one thing that happens, which completely sucks, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's not what I like doing, but I've never spent more of my bandwidth on anything than that in the last year. It's changed my life in a bad way. With the players, it's, there's been some really awesome things that have happened, guys that are now able to help their families and get their parents here for games and provide for siblings for things they couldn't have in the past. And, so that's been cool to see. You also see the guys that maybe didn't need the money that are buying expensive cars, and you worry about them. There's been more conversations. When this first started, I had 2 or 3 real heart-to-hearts with the players just about how I've seen greed screw up, coaches.
Yep.
Coaching staff chemistry, guys, comparisons, the thief of all joy, talking about that. Like, now that you're in the world you said you wanted, here's what comes with it. You're not going to always have apples to apples, and it's not going to be fair all the time. You might be a better player and have better stats than a guy at another school that that's getting more than you. And that's just life. You're going to have to understand that it's not going to always be fair or feel good. If you want more, play better, and that's kind of the way that I've discussed it with the guys. It's no different than how the NFL used to be. The NFL used to have veteran players making less money than incoming draft picks and free agents until they changed, how they did their union. Yeah. And so that's kind of where we're at, because we don't have a union. We don't have a salary cap. We don't have anything. So it's just, guys get what they get, and it's what they wanted. So they have to accept what comes with it.
Yeah. When you consider your role as fundraiser now, and that being one other thing that really didn't have to be a major part of our jobs before, right, that comes at a cost, because there is only so much time, and each minute's fundraising is then, quite frankly, it's a trade-off that's taking away from something else. How do you think that will, or is it affecting, I don't know, your sustainability to do the other parts of your job that you really enjoy, and how is that balance working, if I could even use the word balance?
I came out of the summer maybe as least reset as I've ever been. I met with all our collectives at the end. We raised a ton of money, and I went on a rampage to go get money after spring ball ended for 6 weeks and help these guys. And when it ended, I said, look, find a new way to do this, because I'm not doing this next year. So I did everything I could do. I said, but my family deserves more of me. My team deserves more of me. And my bandwidth that I gave up is not going to be given up ever again this way. So I asked them to redesign the model, because really they made me like the mouth of it for everything. And the head coach has to be a part of it for it to work. But, the Wolfpack Club, who's our fundraising arm of the university for athletics, they involve me only when it fits in my calendar. And, you know how it is. You go out 7 or 8 events a year, and you get up and talk, and that's it, right? And then if there's someone that wants to pay for the indoor, you go have dinner with them. Like, it's not that much, right? This was on the phone every day, or, you know, in an email every day, or in a text every day, or at an event or a fishing trip or a golf tournament. Like it was, and it just didn't stop. And so, you know, it was great from a result standpoint. It was terrible for me. And so, you know, it's a live and learn thing. It's the first time in my 30-year career I've had to do it. I'll be better next year because of it. I'll know what I can say no to now and what I can't.
Well, and I think that part's so powerful in any effective leader, right? Establishing boundaries, setting boundaries, but then consistently enforcing the boundaries. And sometimes you don't know, right, until you've been through the experience. And as much as you can predict, it's hard to be right. And so now that you've seen it, I love the clarity of explaining and giving them a chance to find another way. You didn't say, I'm not interested, I'm not going to participate. It was find another way, which is a better way to do this.
Yeah. They understood. I mean, you know, these guys want me to coach, you know, and so they're just, it's a brand new thing. And, you know, what's crazy about this NIL stuff is the guys in these collectives, they're not professionals either. Like they're businessmen. They got their own companies, their own lives. They're doing this out of the generosity of their hearts, you know, and so we're all trying to do something for the players. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy right now. It really is. I'm thankful here. It's starting to get more organized and efficient.
Yeah. When as you see the landscape or just other things changing in college football that maybe are affecting you day to day, the easy ones, and we've already mentioned both of them, which is the NIL and the transfer portal. I'm sure, well, it's hard to ignore any alignment or realignment that's happening. What other things that, I don't know, are affecting you maybe in your day to day that maybe weren't before, or is that enough? That's because those are a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, you know, the realignment, just our league is kind of on the lockdown, you know, so it's watching it, you know, it's good conversation in the locker room for the coaches to talk about and what's going to happen. But for us, there was never really any fear. Yeah. Nobody can afford to get out of this grant of rights that we have. And even though Florida State, you know, postured to be angry about it, they weren't going to have the money to do it. And nobody wants to not be on TV for 10 years, which is what happens if you leave our league. You give up your right to be on television. Like nobody's going to do that. So we all wish Notre Dame would be the answer and, you know, come in with Stanford or something like that. But, you know, I don't think this league's going to add anybody unless they can get them to be a part of that addition, which makes sense. You know, I've really been watching the Northwestern thing, Bronco. Like Pat Fitzgerald's been a friend of mine for a long time. And so, you know, I feel for him and, you know, watching that one closely, just being a Midwest guy, grew up, you know, in Kansas City, coached in Illinois and in the Big Ten at Wisconsin. And I've known Pat since I was at Montana and he was at Idaho. So, you know, it's a tough situation.
It is. And it's a reminder of, gosh, the constant state of readiness as a head coach and what you're responsible for and how quickly, something that really, I wish I knew everything that happened in my programs that I ran. I really do. I wish I knew everything, but I know that I didn't. And wow, do you hope the things that you didn't know, or somehow the things that were off track, if they did happen, that you did, and it happened so quickly, and the quality of people. There's no one. I sat next to Pat Fitzgerald on the board of AFCA board forever and visited the program. And one of my colleagues basically said, if it could happen to Pat Fitzgerald, it can happen to anyone, meaning because he was so vigilant. And so, I see that, and just the certainty that it can happen and the uncertainty of how it's going to happen, right? That's what keeps us all up at night, because we're responsible for the entire program, and you never quite know where that might manifest.
Yeah. I mean, this guy's been there 26 years. He bleeds that school, you know. His blood's definitely in the bricks of that school. And so great reminder, I guess, you know, at the same time, just, I don't know how many players has he coached in that period of time, you know, that 5 or 6 guys can come out and knock the entire deck of cards down. It's tough, you know, and seeing the decisions that were made there and the timeline they were made was hard. You know, you think they would have given him a little bit more time suspended to really find out what happened before they pulled the plug, but it's tough.
Yeah, and the pressures that mount on leaders, that actually, in my opinion, I'm not sure how it was for you, but sometimes if there was an accusation of player misconduct in a program I was running, the easy thing to do was to act quickly, suspend, and jump to a conclusion and eliminate them from the program. Like everyone wanted a clean, fast solution. But quite frankly, I was more interested in, do we know for sure what happened?
Yeah.
How long is it going to take? And much more of the innocent until proven guilty, rather than get the news and the headlines off by that we've acted fast, but maybe we didn't act accurately or fairly. And that's kind of self-preservation. And so sometimes, to your point, waiting longer, even though there's heat happening and challenge, to make sure you're accurate. I see huge value in that amidst the criticism, just to make sure you get it right.
Yeah, it's like instant replay, right? Like everyone gets mad when that takes them 3.5 minutes instead of 3 minutes. Like, don't we just want them to get it right? I mean, at the end of the day, like, he was suspended without pay. Yeah. Leave him in that position until you know what the truth is, and you had a third party come in and do their homework. And if you need another third party, then bring in another third party, but like, to me, the same thing. I've had players that have had off the field things, and you need to know exactly what happened before you make a life-changing decision for anyone when you're in a position of power or executive position, in my opinion. And there is going to be, backlash publicly if you don't, I guess, but that backlash will exist if you do it wrong as well. So, I guess same thing when you go to offering a kid. I'd rather be late and right than early and wrong,
And quite frankly, the early in today's world, many of the early offers aren't real anyway. There's this idea that there's an offer, and many times I would ask the family, just ask them if you can take it. Ask them if you can commit today, and just see if it's real. And they would just say, "What do you mean?" I just said, ask them if you could commit today, and just see how they would respond, and that would tell them if that offer is real. And it's kind of an indictment against us, the early and right, where basically people are being early with no risk because they never intended to honor it anyway. That was just to buy them time.
Yeah, recruiting's a mess. I mean, it is right now. It's, and for us, I just, try to boil it back to, is this guy going to be a good part of our team?
Yep.
Does he fit the culture? Does he make us better? Are we going to enjoy being around him? Like, just get back to what's important, and it's kind of, you have to recenter your staff at times with what we're dealing with.
Well, and because of the external environment, right? Each program and each leader, you almost have to create your own oasis amidst it all. You acknowledge the forces, and here's the wind blowing this way, and here's the lightning coming that way, and here's the waves coming. But part of our job, and part of each head coach's job, is to see all that. But at least in your little section of the harbor or the port, right, there can be a true north, and there can be balance, and there can be principles that you operate on. And I think many head coaches just get tired of enforcing those. But yet that really is the main reason most of us started anyway. And once you drift from those, if you do, you kind of lose your soul along the way, and then become part of the problem rather than, one of maybe the icons of solutions.
Yeah, it's hard. There's so much negativity now. Like, it can completely engulf your day. You have to create ways, to get that negative stuff out of your system, I think, and your staff constantly talking about it, and putting people in your building that kind of can dog watch that for you too. Ruffin's great for that for me.
He's awesome. Because
when I get tied up with what I have to do, I mean, he understands what I want. And so having that person, and if you can get multiple, it helps. But that, just remind people to quit bitching and let's get better,
Yeah.
Let's go do our job.
As you see the sources of negativity, how much of that would you trace, if you could put a percentage, or maybe even not, that might even be the fair or the best way to say it, to the social media or just the continuous coverage? In addition to other ways that it's coming in, how much of it do you think is coming, I don't know, because of the increased visibility through that?
I would say a lot of it is, that constant stream of information that people now are addicted to. If you just got up and went to work and never looked at anything other than the job you had to do, you probably wouldn't have to deal with a whole lot. We just don't live in that world anymore. It's hard to unplug, it is. And, everybody's communicating through these devices now. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of that. And my wife tells me all the time, like, you would be so much happier if you quit looking at Twitter, and so I try to do that. Like, unless it's recruiting based, once we hit the season, I try not to read anything on there.
Yeah. Well, and it's great advice, but hard to follow. As you said, it's hard to unplug, and you'd like to stay current and abreast of everything that's happening and the information that can either help your program or that you need to be aware of with something that might be going on.
Right.
You mentioned Ruffin McNeil, and wow, was I lucky enough to have Ruffin on our staff for a year. Just having him in the building, another head coach, former head coach with about every type of life experience you can manage or have, with the ability to relate to all types of people, and to have another set of eyes and ears while you're being the head coach, to help with that. I found I was comforted by it, quite frankly. I've been trying to think of the word. I was lucky, but I was comforted by that, to just have another voice to be able to one-on-one talk with at times. And besides your wife, I'm wondering who else, or if anyone, kind of becomes your voice of reason, when you're looking for that from your position.
Yeah, well, Ruff and I spent a lot of time together, and I've known him since I was 25. So he's not just a head coach sitting in there; he's a mentor for me. So it's great to be able to go in there and talk and laugh, and also challenge each other on some things, like, what do you think about this? And but yeah, my director of ops, Adam Clark, is a phenomenal guy too. So he's got a good pulse of our building, and our strength coach has a great pulse of our team. So there's different people, for different pieces of information that you go to. My trainer is awesome. I've been fortunate to keep him for 8 years. So sometimes those guys, he's had a lot of opportunities to leave and has stayed. So the longevity that you have with people helps too, because we've been through a lot. So those shared experiences now make those conversations even more valuable. They understand what I'm talking about.
It's fun to listen to you. Basically, in organizational design, right? Every process needs an owner, and the areas you're just talking about are all processes. And when you have the right owner over a process, wow, does that ever just keep the flywheel spinning faster and just basically eliminate the number of crises. There will be crises, really, and a lot of them, but when you have the right owner of an area, whether it's the director of football operations or whether it's the trainer or whether it's the strength coach, when they're capable people, really good at what they do, and they're great people that you love, admire, and respect and can talk to, and they have it, meaning whatever's happening, they have it. And then on the rare occasion they come to you, wait, there's something that's pretty significant that they would like your help with. And when you're with them long enough, as you said, and 8 years is, in today's world, is a long time, that's a great situation to have developed and to have built.
Yeah, I'm fortunate not only to be at a school 11 years now, but to have, certain people. My strength coach has been here the whole time, trainer for 8. And so I've hired everyone here, right? So everybody in this building is drinking the Kool-Aid, and so it's nice to not have to push back. How hard that is when you get to a place and this is how we used to do it, coach. Like, I don't hear that here. I don't have to listen to that comment, which, when you first take over a school, is like the one that you just want to kill people about. It's how we used to do it. Well, that's why you fired the guy, right? Like, we're going to change. So it took me a while, to kind of vet and get people out or move people along. And now to have people that, trust what we're doing, and it helps a ton. And we're way more efficient because of that.
Well, and the one word you just mentioned, which is as we finish up here, is time. And head coaches really don't have time, and they aren't hired under a long-term time frame now. And the way that I see it is really in your first year, if you've been hired, there's a pretty significant grace period as you change and work to change a program. Year 2, there better start to be significant markers that are being hit. And if that doesn't happen by early in year 3, not at the end of year 3, but maybe even by the first third of the season mark, if there doesn't seem to be an ignition and blast off, there's most likely going to be a change, which is, so back to your point of time, there just doesn't seem to be much. And that can really, if the leader isn't really clear on what destination they want to end up and how, compromises can be made along the way at the excuse of time. And that actually makes it worse, not better, to have a best chance to accomplish what you're trying to.
Yeah, it's a short leash these days for sure. I feel for the coaches that are trying to flip a program, and the amount of time they've been given, and some of the fan bases that have become lynch mobs, for some of these places. It's hard. I mean, you got to really know what you're going into as a head coach. You better understand the clientele and the whole thing. It's a lot different than it was when I got here or when you went to UVA.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the reasons for the podcast. And so the insights you've shared, and just quite frankly, the matter of fact, truthful and honest way, I think anyone that's considering the profession, right, it's hard to present what it really is, and really what we're accomplishing, and what we worked on today is just to pull back the curtain a little more. So someone can choose, and it's alluring with the title, and it's alluring with the fame, and it's alluring with the prestige, and it's alluring with the money, but none of those are the reason that you'll be skilled at the job, or quite frankly, make a lasting impact. And so maybe you could just close with the reasons that you love doing what you're doing, or the best parts of maybe the profession, or the things that you look forward to on a daily basis that that you still enjoy.
Well, I love the camaraderie of the sport, the brotherhood of it. I love the competitive piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
I chose the profession because I love helping people get better, and being a part of that journey where you see a young person become full circle, and knowing that you were a part of directing that change, and in some point in time maybe getting those words said to you, like, hey, I wouldn't have done this without you. Like, that drives me. Like, it's, the wins are great. The emotional things that happen in the locker room after big wins, you'll always have that. But the personal change that you can create and empower people with for the rest of their lives. When your players of 20 years ago are sending you funny pictures and can't wait to come to a game this year, coach, like stuff like that. That's why I coach, and to me, that's the juice, because there's a lot of bad stuff with this job now. It's not what it used to be. You don't get to coach football when you're a head coach a whole lot, but you still get to empower and change people and create chemistry and help young people grow. So that's, to me, what the best part of the job is. As you know, the money can help, but none of us chose this because of money. I chose it to be a high school coach. It just happened that I got lucky and got into college, but the money now is so much different than it used to be. So I think that's still kind of like, wow, really? You're going to pay us this amount to do this, and which now we completely earn, in my opinion, with what's going on in the profession. Yeah. But it's not the motivating factor when you get into it. If it is for somebody, they need to probably find something else. This is not a job where you come to work because you want to make a lot of money. There's very few people in coaching that actually make a lot of money.
Yeah. Really well said. And I know with the final scrimmage today and kind of transitioning from camp then into the 2 weeks away from kicking off, it's an exciting and challenging time, but that you would take time to visit with us, I really appreciate it, Dave, and wish you and your team all the best. And it's fun to I don't know. It's fun for me to have worked with coaches and had one of my quarterbacks that's there. And, it's kind of like when someone, and I don't think family member is too strong a term.
Yeah.
But when a family member or someone you really cares about, when they choose to do something else, you really hope that they end up at a place and with people that will continue their passion, and they'll find fulfillment, and that they have their best chance to succeed. And so when I think of my guys, former guys, that makes me smile. And so I'm excited for you, the staff, the team, and wish you all the best. And just, again, thanks for taking time with us.
Oh, you bet. It's good to see you, Bronco, and thanks for the opportunity. And I appreciate, all the things that you're doing. I mean, I know you want to be coaching right now, and I'm sure that's not far off for you. If you ever get the itch and want to come out and visit, you're welcome here.
Thank you very much. Brian, we'll pass it back to you to close us out.
Well, absolutely, and a great conversation, and certainly appreciate you jumping on in the middle of a busy fall camp for you, Dave. And I will just mention that you were 2-0 against Bronco. They're at NC State.
You had to remind me. I knew. That's
you
embedded.
knew it was coming, Bronco. You knew it was coming. That record would come up. I just wanted to ask, what was the biggest difficulty in preparing for some of those Broncos teams that at UVA there?
I think one of the reasons I hired Coach and I, like the crap he does on offense, man, is
Totally.
every day just watching it at practice right now. It just blows me away how much creativity and flexibility his system has within it, and how easy it is for the players to just bounce from one thing to another. Like, it's mind blowing, because some of the other offensive coaches I've had, even though they were incredible, they were very locked into what they did. Like, they weren't going to drift other than putting in a trick play here or there. Like, this is our system, and it's crazy all the things he can do. So, getting ready for all that in a 3 to 4 day prep is always hard. And that's one of the things I love about our defense with Tony Gibson. Like, we're a hard prep for offenses, and now we're a hard prep for defenses. So Broncos teams were always well coached. They were fundamentally sound, and they were hard to get ready for schematically.
Well, and that's the same now for you guys, and a big season ahead there for the Wolfpack. Dave Doeren, the head coach there at NC State. Thank you so much for joining us and joining us here on Head Coach U. We'll catch you all again next week.